So, hello, everybody, and welcome to Coho BC's Conversations with Co-Owners. This is one of my favorite sessions where we get to hear from people who are living this and help learn from them what it is that is working, what are their challenges, the unique joys, etc., that have come out of this model. And we are delighted that people have been able to join us here today. So before we begin, we like to acknowledge that we are living, we are loving, we are talking about the ownership, the stewardship of lands that is the ancestral and unceded territories of many different peoples across the province. And we really take that responsibility seriously to steward the land and to turn it into a home that we love, that is supportive to ourselves, to our community, and to the planet. So what is Coho BC? Coho BC is an initiative that works to promote co-ownership as a viable housing option here across British Columbia, to provide resources and professional support to assist groups going through the co-ownership process, to assist in the creation of co-ownership groups through a dating pool, a chance to meet other like-minded individuals or families, and to facilitate the resale of shared property or shares in property to other potential buyers and partners. Who we are is a collection of professionals, realtors, lawyers, builders, financial institutions, architects, mediator even, all with experience and expertise in collective housing, co-ownership, and really helping you to navigate the additional complexities that come with buying a property with others. Really want to make sure people, when they're doing this, people have been doing this for a long time, but they want to make sure people are doing it with the right professional support, with people who understand the process, who understand how to set you up for success, how to make sure you have the right financial structure, the right legal structure, the right social structure, all the pieces before you make the commitment to buy a property together. This is not a unique initiative. We're part of an international movement because housing prices have gone up around the world. Social isolation is a problem around the world. And so there are groups forming across the US, across Canada, Australia, the UK, and other folks to help facilitate this type of endeavor. This is actually a more popular idea than many people would think, particularly with the rising cost of housing. In fact, in a recent survey, non-owners, specifically in this case, 33 to 74%, depending on their age demographic, are open to co-ownership as a pathway to build good housing and to get into the market. So even if this doesn't become 33% of the market, it has certainly the potential to be 1, 2, 5%, and really be a pathway for a lot of people. So who am I? Hello, everybody. My name is Noam Dolgan. I'm a realtor based out of Vancouver, specializing in co-ownership, sustainable living, green homes, first-time home buyers, really just real homes for real people, and outside the box real estate thinking about housing as a triple bottom line choice, meaning you want to make a decision that supports you, that is supportive economically, it's affordable, supports you socially, and is good for the planet environmentally. Before entering real estate, my background is in environmental education and greening and community engagement and development. So co-ownership became an obvious pathway once I was a realtor to kind of help achieve these values that I think are so important in how we choose to live. We also have David Hale with us today, who will introduce himself in a few moments. David is a realtor in Victoria, who at the same time that I was founding Coho BC, founded Shared Home Ownership Victoria. He's got many years in real estate and now many years in co-ownership. And he himself sold 2/3 of his home a few years ago, and he's one of our speakers today as well. We'll talk about his experience in a bit. So we're not going to get into too much details about what is co-ownership. If you haven't been to our info session or read our guide to co-ownership, we'll encourage you to come back to a session that is focused on that, on what are the specifics, the social, the financial, the legal, what are the types of housing that are really well suited for co-ownership, what are the different models that we see. We've got a very long presentation about it, and if you haven't been to it, we definitely encourage you to attend one of those sessions coming up. Today we have a great group of panelists who are all living in co-ownership, who can talk about their experiences and their what they've done to make this a supportive housing environment for themselves. And we have David and Judy Hale, Luke Palmer, who I hope is with us, and Emily Gale, all of which will be introducing themselves in a moment. So we will start with David Hale and ask David to introduce himself and take a few minutes to tell us his story, how co-ownership made sense for him, and what they chose to do. So David, welcome. Thank you for being here today. And if you
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess our story started about 10 years ago when we purchased this home that you see on the screen. It basically is a duplex style townhome, and there's not many of them, so they're a strange anomaly. This is in Langford, outskirts of Victoria, and it was spot zoned by the developer, so there was a legal suite on the bottom floor. So my thought was that, thinking ahead, looking into the future, I wanted to have a place with some income. And if something happened to me, I couldn't work or whatever, I could always live in the downstairs, entry level accommodation, age in place kind of model. So that was really why we went into it. I had no concept at that time of shared home ownership or anything like that. So, as time went on, my wife and I love to travel, and we got kicked out of the States March 8th, 2020 by COVID. Came back, there was people that were renting our house, so we couldn't get it back. So we ended up staying for 9 months in our motorhome on a friend's property. And one day my wife and I came up with the same idea within an hour of each other, that we should sell the upper 2 floors to Derek and Melissa, who were friends of ours. And they had a 2-year-old, and they were crammed into a 550 square foot condo up at Bear Mountain, a 1-bedroom condo. And of course, the child had taken over the bedroom, and they had to move their bed out into the living room, and then the couch had to go. So it was a very, very cramped situation. And then the gal moved in downstairs and was banging on the ceiling with a broom, and so they just felt like they were walking on eggshells, and it was a really uncomfortable situation for them. So long story short, they were over the moon to be offered the top 2 floors of her home. They tripled their size. They moved into from 550 to 1,600 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and so on. The Galloping Goose Trail is right behind us, and there's an elementary school like half a block away. So they're just, like I say, really, really excited. Their little guy is 4 years old now. And so we've been in this relationship together for about 2.5 years. So my idea is to take a 5-year term, 5-year mortgage, and then essentially have as the exit strategy, have the sale, as an exit strategy. But I know what's going to happen here in another year. We're all going to talk, and what we're going to say is, look, let's do another 5 years. So what we'll do is we'll just redo the agreement. We have a joint venture agreement. It's about 12 pages long. That covers absolutely everything that you could possibly imagine. And so, yeah, that's that's kind of it in a nutshell. It works really well for Judy and I as we travel. There's not much yard work to worry about. The Strata takes care of that. They check our mail and send pictures of our mail to us. And so we essentially, what we were able to do when we financed this, of course, all of us are on title and all of us are on the mortgage. So we took a new mortgage, we refinanced, took some money out, put that into some good quality investments. And so that's what's funding our life. So I think there's a huge market. There's a lot of people in the same situation as we are. Or maybe baby boomers, have a good amount of equity in their home, have a suite that they could live in, and use it as a landing pad, someplace to come home to after traveling. So yeah, that's my story in a nutshell, Noam.
Wonderful. Thank you, David. And we'll have many more questions for you as the evening goes on. But let's introduce our other speakers this evening. Next up, we have Luke Palmer, who is a founding member of the Dream House, which is an East Vancouver collective home. Luke, thank you so much for being here today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Hi, all. We were living as a collective group in a rented house in Vancouver 12 years ago. And because of the housing market getting so kind of investment crazy, we decided, okay, well, we do have to own to have our security. That needs to be something to provide us the kind of stability that we wanted. So we put in what we could, what we'd saved up. And we had other friends and family act as investors. So we collected other money to put it together. And so we bought the Dream House, which is just off Commercial Drive in East Van. It's an old 1912 4-story, 3-story plus basement, old kind of wooden house. And so we made a unique thing work. We got to be, ours was very trust-based. We had everything written out and contracted. But we moved into the dilapidated old house together and renovated it together, and over time, or centrally with me, because I do I have a construction renovation business. And so yeah, we reclaimed that house a bit and have all done really well in terms of being able to purchase it and afford it. We've never had a bank mortgage. We have just our private investment in it, and owners, some of the occupants, some people elsewhere own portions, either owning a percentage of value or just holding part of the investment / mortgage, and then just getting paid interest for that. So some people support that via what they consider an ethical investment in it. And so we've been going on and changing a little bit over the last, it's now been 11 years we've been there. And people have sold at times. And what we do is we have a system for valuing the building at times. And when people sell, they get out their percentage of current value. If someone was an interest kind of earning investor or supporter, then they can also leave at any time. We have typically a year notice for our people who want to exit. So that gives time for the other people to adapt. Because again, the safeguard exit strategy is selling the whole thing if we couldn't cover anyone's investment share. And so, now the house is maybe 3/4 renovated, completed. It's a new furnace and roof and heat pump systems and hardwood floors. About 90% of the house, which we all managed to do together in a pretty frugal way. And Yeah, so it's a pretty nice home to live in. And yeah, we definitely have openings for the right people who want to live collectively. So there's no separate suites. It's 5 bedrooms. Currently 6 people, one couple in those bedrooms. And we have a collective style based off our own values, primarily hierarchical, non-hierarchical power structure, consensus-based decision-making, nonviolent communication system. And so, yeah, we come together with meetings once a month. We everyone cooks a couple of times a month at least, and for the group. And we have a lot of shared meals and kind of a shared flexible family model that evolves in different directions over times.
Fantastic. Thank you, Luke. Definitely lots to learn about the collective model and how you make that work. But as I said, we'll get to those pieces. Our last speaker tonight is Emily Gale. Emily is in the category of some of my favorite types of people who've come to us at Coho. Emily grew up in a co-ownership situation and has now come back to us to see how she can help recreate the success of her childhood into the future. Emily, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to hearing your story, and I definitely want to know about this picture.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see the picture. Oh, I see it there. Okay. Yeah, so I guess I'm not actually a co-owner, but I did grow up with kind of, my parents shared 2 properties. One is their home in Vancouver, which they share with another couple. And then the other is a cabin on Saturna Island that they share with some friends. So the house in the city, I think that they bought both sort of late 70s, early 80s. The house in the city has 3 suites. So my family lived on the top 2 floors, and then the other couple lived on the main floor. And then there was a basement suite that was rented out, still is rented out. And yeah, that was, I mean, it was kind of funny. I was in one of these talks a month ago or something, and I realized that I actually can't even picture, or it doesn't make sense to me, the idea of just a single family owning and living in a home. So I guess growing up in it, that's the norm to me. And yeah, so the couple that live on the main floor were sort of in the same community as my parents when they decided to buy the house together. Now they're very close friends, family, really. Probably the closest thing to aunts and uncles relationship wise that I have and had growing up. And to the extent that they actually were listed as my brother and my guardians were there to be in, were both my parents to die. So they thought that was better than us going off to a family we didn't know in South Africa. So yeah, so I guess that was just my normal way of growing up, but obviously it's worked well for my parents and for their friends. Now that we're, I don't know, 40 years in, I guess. And then the property on Saturna is actually, it's a nested co-ownership. So first it's a land holding company. So a group of, I don't know, 30 hippies in the 70s bought this big chunk of land together and incorporated, I guess. And there's 30 shares total for sharing 300 acres of land. And and each share gets 1 acre for their own house or cabin or camping or whatever they want it for. And then the rest of the land is just held in common. And my parents, I guess we didn't like come from wealth really. So my dad actually bought into that with a friend who later, I guess in the 80s, maybe 10 years later, sold his share to another friend of my parents, who is still our co-owner of that property now. And yeah, that's been a treat too, to be able to grow up sort of, it's our cabin is just a little off-grid, up a mountain, 12 by 12, like it's very rustic and small, kind of more like glamping really. But I feel really privileged to have been able to like grow up with a beautiful house in the city, but also with kind of constant access to nature and to a piece of land that I was able to grow with, I guess. I don't know if, well, anyways, there's probably time for questions after. So that's my story, I guess.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily. And would you tell us who is in these pictures here?
As these pictures. So I would love to be a co-owner. And my dream is actually to be more sort of like, who just spoke, Luke?
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep.
Collective living is my thing. So I've lived collectively for, like intentionally collectively for the last 7 years. And before that, kind of shared homes in various ways with people. And so, yes, this picture with all the red is my my previous house. Actually, when I lived in Vancouver, we lived together for 5 years. And that was, I don't know, during COVID, we got creative and tried to make the best of it. And we did a photo shoot where we all did everything in red. Yeah, and in that home, there was 5 adults and 1 kid and my dog. And so that was also been like really special for me to build a relationship with a kiddo in such like intimate ways. I've lived with him from the age of 3 to 8. So he's pretty special to me. And now I live in Victoria in a new collective house. And yeah, that picture, the other picture is on Saturn Island with one of my Victoria housemates.
Fantastic. One thing I love about your story is, this type of ownership is not new. And we like to think that it's a response to the crazy house prices of today. But of course, at every time in history, housing has been expensive for certain people. And community and collectivity often for many people is a better choice. So this is not a new concept. And of course, around the world, we see people owning, collectively with family and friends. I'm not officially one of the speakers today, but I live in a co-ownership situation with my father in a laneway house in the back of our property. And when we ask our kids, who are now 8 and 10, how do they see themselves in the future? They kind of look at me dumbfounded, like, what do you mean? Like, we're going to live in this house and raise our kids in this house, and you're going to live in the laneway house like Zeta Avi does. And it's just their reality and doesn't seem strange. So even though for many people, especially in North America, where for the last 50 years, since post World War II, there's been a real focus on the individual single family home. This is not a new concept, and once you've been in it, it really just seems like the obvious way to do better housing.
I hate to break it to you, but it's not 2000, it's 2020, so that was more like 70 years.
Shh. Thank you for the correction. So basically the point of today is to have a chance to ask some questions, to meet these folks and hear about their experiences, and and see kind of how you can see yourself in a pathway. We have intentionally invited people from a variety of housing formats and co-ownership formats here, from collective living to multiple suites and the like. We look forward to hearing a little more about your experience. So I'm going to start off with a couple of questions, but I encourage folks to throw their questions into the chat or to unmute themselves and go from there. I will, for the moment, stop the share so we can actually see each other. Just be aware this is being recorded, so if you do not want to be on camera or ask too many personal details, don't feel like you have to. So a couple of you guys started to talk about this, but I just want to start off with a general question, which is, why did you choose this route? What was the major motivator? Was it social? Was it financial? Was it was just the obvious path? What brought you to co-ownership in the first place? And Luke, David, and Emma, you guys just jump in and answer the question.
Sure, I can start if you want. For us, it seemed like a no-brainer. We were traveling a lot and really didn't need a big space, and we were starting to become minimalists. When you live in a motorhome for months at a time, a year ago we were on the road for 11 months. So, how much, we asked ourselves the question, how much do we need? And, the answer is very little. I'm still, after, 8 years of motorhoming, I still take 3 times more clothes with me than I need. And I have clothes at home, you know what I mean? So, for us, it was just, it was a bit of a no-brainer. Why don't we share our house? Why don't we, cash in, put those funds to work and, and fund our travel. So to semi-retire, that was really our goal.
Fantastic. And Luke?
Hi all. We did it. It was kind of a parallel process for us. I thought about living with the group as something that's more socially healthy for me in general. And even whether that group was a nuclear family or a larger group or a different family model. And so as we looked to buy, and I was aligned with several friends and kind of co-inhabitants as roommates, that kind of thing. We found that our values aligned strongly. And so it definitely became something of looking to do something in a way that was affordable, but it shifted to clearly being my primary way of living idea. So now in our collective, we've got some financial stability. Now when we have new people move in, that's one of our requirements, is generally that it's not just someone looking to do it in a way that's cheaper, but that it's someone that it's ideologically desirous of the system of collective living. All the benefits of it, but enthusiastically into the costs and benefits, which I find it's a lot of work. It's it's got to be a passion project, I think, and perhaps like any relationship, it's a lot of work, and you have to be, I think, into it in several ways, and getting fed and nourished by it in several ways for that to work and be a harmonious balance, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, Emily, want to add about your family's experience or what's driving you to look for collective living?
Yeah. I guess I was born into it. But I think for my parents, my dad actually, both my parents lived like in communal houses in the 70s, with friends and community, like much like our collective houses are now. And my dad actually owned his collective house, or his, I think they called it a co-op house, even though it wasn't a co-op, with friends in the 70s. And so I don't know if it was just an affordability thing for why they decided to sort of buy the home they imagined raising a family in and stuff with other people, but I think they already were very comfortable with the sort of communal connection aspect ideas. And that, I mean, I guess people didn't make as much money back then, but the amount of money they bought that house for, wow, I'm very but yes, I guess they still needed to split it with someone. So yeah, and then for why I'm kind of working on moving that way myself, I guess largely I'm tired of paying other people's mortgages and having to move every 2 years. I want to be able to invest in a garden and know that I'll get to see it grow next season too. Yeah.
Stability. Fantastic. So clearly it can't all be peaches and cream. There must be some challenges that come along with this as well. Maybe you guys can speak a little bit about the challenges you've encountered along the way, and how you've overcome them. Luke, why don't you go first this time?
Okay, well, yeah, I think when we started, there was one clear intention of structure. And for us, I think one part of the safety mechanism for us is that anyone could leave at any time, but we did have generally a year notice for things, or at least for funding to come out, to give us some stability. And so we've had significant changes, and we've had like several people leave at once, and it's just flowed and become kind of different at different times. So I think if you have a really long-term, or perhaps lifetime, or a lifetime, a 10-year period or a 20-year period aimed group of people, you've got to be really deeply dedicated, like whether that's family ties, kind of blood ties, child rearing, or some other deeper level of commitment to keep the group together. Certainly in our case, because we're this collective of individual adults and who might move to different countries, or education, or work, or get married and have kids. And so then the debate comes up, are we going to flow in that direction? Are we going to become a house that hosts kids? And we've almost done that a couple of times, and we totally could do that. Everything we do is consensus decision making, and done from a kind of compassionate care, support orientation towards each other. And that actually has almost always been held, like that kind of respect for the group and respect for the house. And it's something we work on all the time. So I think that essential philosophy has been a great support. But we have had to flow in different ways. And sometimes when somebody leaves and after some time sells their share at current market value, they've all done really well. Like as property values have gone up over the last 12 years, they have been generally at or around the long-term average, which I think is about 11% a year long-term increase in property values. So they've all got paid out really well. But it's an ongoing challenge for us if and when people change. For the current people, new investors, or new people that are buying in, there's got to be a balance of in and out at the time. Otherwise, would face a sale of the property to cover it. So that's our biggest challenge. Other than that, it's kind of interpersonal, the more the more we have people changing. Like in the 10 years, we've probably had several kind of different feeling groups, I think, in the home. So I'd say maybe something like 25 people split between our 5 bedrooms over the last 10 years, 10, 12 years. So that's
Not all
challenging and a bunch of work.
Not all
Hmm?
co-owners, to be clear, right?
No, not all co-owners. No, we do when somebody comes in, we do a year of where you could invest in the property and be paid interest on your investment, but not actually buying into the slightly more complicated share owning portion for 1 year. So it takes 1 year for us of financial relationship together, getting to know each other, and normally we know the people for a long time, and they meet us and know us and are very similar in ideology. But yeah, normally living together for a year first. And so for those people who bought and sold, it's yeah, I can see the greatest stability is when we have people who are dedicated for a long period of time, 10 or 20 years or life. And it'd be very stable, I think, if we had 4 out of 5 of our bedrooms or our corners or in whatever form, 2 sets of parents or whatever like that, who were steady, then I would call kind of easy stable. And as it is, it's a bit more, there's more change on average. It's probably, we have a housemate change once a year, something like that. And so it, yeah, that takes some work. I like the idea of permanent, easy, long-term balance. Yeah.
Fantastic. Emily, you were observing it as a child, but is there any kind of challenges that you saw or that you saw your parents experience in their experiences through these multiple versions of co-ownership?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe for the couple that share the house with my parents, it might have been a bit intense when we were all little kids. At least I remember him being quite like grumpy, and I would try to avoid him. But now he's like, I don't know if he changed or it's just because we're not like little kids anymore, but he's lovely now. So I don't know if that ever caused them strife. I think that like it's gone pretty well. Even I guess like a couple of years ago, we sat down to have a talk of like, okay, you're getting older. You might not be able to walk up 3 flights of stairs, in the next few years or 10 years or whatever. So what's the plan? And they all had a really hard time thinking about leaving the house. But they did kind of all agree that they would want to like buy another place together, hopefully in Kits where they've made their home. So to me, that seems like they've made it work always. And I would say on the island, it's a little more tricky. I think most people who bought in the 70s were sort of young hippies, and people's lifestyles and values, etc., have changed as they've grown, I'm guessing, to the point where I'm sort of waiting for the older generation to not be as involved before I feel like I'm ready to join the board and be a part of their processes or the processes that we have. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely been conflict in those places. But there are clear like guidelines, like there's an AGM, there's board meetings, there's different committees. They follow whatever those voting rules are that everyone used to use. And yeah, to answer Luke's question about shares, people can sell their shares. And I think that the share price is actually like quite low still. So there's a wait list that people can get on if they're interested in joining, like potentially buying property. And if a share comes available, then the people on the wait list are let know about it. And there's a process that I'm not 100% familiar with for, like, I think they have to come and visit the land. They have to attend a board meeting, introduce themselves to the whole membership from an email or something, before kind of actually being considered as people who could buy in or buy that share. And then basically the share price is the same for any property. And if people have built a house or done, you know, updates or whatever, then they might sell that on like, well, as well. So it doesn't count as like a normal, I don't really know about how real estate works, but it doesn't count as like a normal sale. The people are buying the share plus whatever those are, like upgrades or something like that.
Great. And we'll talk more about exit strategies in a bit. David, thank you, Emily. David, tell us a little bit about challenges that you've encountered.
Well, thank you for leaving me for last, Noam, because I've been able to come up with a couple things. You know, our situation is pretty boring, actually. So, but I guess, you know, the main thing to start with was Judy, my wife, thinking, oh no, what have I done? I've given up my house, you know, my granite counters and blah, 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 and all this space. You know, one of the things that we gave up as well was storage, you know, so we don't have near as much storage. We'd have to rent a locker. What else? Little feet running overhead. So, you know, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, they like to run a lot. So, you know, it's a matter of us sort of getting a little in tune with their schedule, right? You know, we know that the little feet are going to start running around at 7:30, 8 o'clock. So, you know, there's no sense staying up till 2 in the morning and then, you know, complaining about not being able to sleep. So, little things like that, I guess. Parking, you know, we had to give up a little bit of parking as well. But yeah, those are, you know, in the big scheme of things, it's all minor stuff. So, you know, it's working really well.
Thank you. So one of the reasons why I like to do this session is because the only time we hear about co-ownership in the news is when things go bad, right? You hear a lot of, oh, you should never do this, you know, blah, blah, blah. It always is up in the courts. But of course, 99.9% of the relationships are like Emily's parents here, you know, goes on for years or, you know, and can be very successful. And we only hear about it when people don't have a good succession plan, a good legal structure, and a good exit strategy. So there's some questions here that were sent directly to me. I've now opened up the chat so it can be more open to everybody. But, you know, does your network have lawyers that are familiar with this process? And the answer is absolutely. If people were here from the beginning, you saw that we have lawyers, we have financial institutions, we have mediators, we have all sorts of folks who can really guide you from beginning to end. And one of the key pieces of what the lawyers set you up for is an exit strategy, is a transition strategy for a time when somebody does need to move on. So I think actually Luke, David, and Emily have all kind of referred to their exit strategies already quickly in their talks, but maybe just give a chance for you guys to talk a little bit about that succession planning and how you plan for the future and how you ensure that when somebody wants to go, when the relationship has run its course or life situations change, people die, they divorce, they retire, you know, they move on, that there is a succession plan to make sure that everyone is protected and can get out their equity or what they need. So you want to talk a little bit about what you've done to ensure that protection and make sure we get nowhere near the courts? Emily, you're up first this time if you're ready.
I only half listened to the question, but I think it was about what the exit plan is. Okay. Yeah, okay. I know my parents' exit plan in the city is if someone wants to sell, then they have a year to figure out if they can buy them out or find someone else to buy in. And then after that year, if it hasn't been possible to find someone, then the whole house would be put on the market. But yeah, don't really foresee that ever happening. I mean, if they sell the house, it'll be because they both all want to and are ready to and or need to mobility wise or whatever. And yeah, I think that the structure for the land share is more complex just because it is like a large legal body. I don't really understand how it works, but yeah, I guess it's ultimately it's just shares in the company that the shares equal land. So whatever it takes to sell and buy shares, I guess is what it would be.
Right. Yeah, and the system you mentioned for your parents is kind of the standard 3-part system that generally most groups adopt with their lawyers, which is the first stage is a first right of refusal, right? A partner can buy you out. The next stage is an attempt to find a new partner to fill that void. But if those 2 pathways can't work, your ability to access the capital that you need for your next stage in life is protected by a right to force a sale in the property as a whole. And so this is kind of an essential part of the arrangement. One of the questions that always exists is kind of how is financing, because over time prices tend to go up, mortgages tend to go down, and you need a higher entry point. And so having pathways to financing, Luke talked about this already, is essential. And that's one of the challenges that maybe you're seeing on the island, right? I'm assuming there's not a lot of pathways to finance those shares. So probably it's one of the reasons why they've stayed more affordable over time. It's another conversation, but as long as you create, what we've been discovering at Coho is that as long as you create a good marketable product, right? It's a good product, like there's value in the property, it's good housing, it makes sense. You have a good partner, you have a proper pathway to financing, and you have a proper legal structure, then you have a solid product where there's security for all involved, and an ability to exit without everyone necessarily having to sell outright. But if pieces like that are missing, it can be more difficult to actualize all your value. But that was an aside. David, do you want to talk a little bit about your exit strategy? And you referenced it earlier too.
Yeah. We have a 12-page joint venture agreement that covers, absolutely everything you could imagine. If anything went wrong, death, divorce, non-payment, a default, I've actually put some pretty heavy penalties into our agreement. So, if someone decided they were gonna throw up their hands and go to Mexico and see you later, the house could be sold, and the defaulting partner would lose 25% of the value in their share, which is very, very, very heavy duty. So nobody's going to do that. They're going to bring Aunt Millie in, or somebody, try to find somebody with some money, or come up with another purchaser rather than do that. So so the financial penalty is really steep to break the agreement. And of course, like I said, we each have the right of first refusal. So, but we're looking at, in our case, a 5-year term, because that fits with a 5-year mortgage. We'll start talking again on year 4, which is another year, and just to see where everybody's at. But like I say, we'll it's likely, unless Judy and I want out to cash out and maybe get into a different shared home opportunity, we'll probably just stay with what we have.
Luke, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for us, our home and living situation, it feels like to us at least a really beautiful version of a thing. And as like Noam talked about it, kind of marketable product. I think it's a lovely thing to have this home in the city, and so we have lots of appreciation for what we have. And it, I think we get a lot of value, everyone living there, out of the house and location and system. So people quite want to be there, and they realize the kind of effort and honoring that this thing requires. So we think of it as kind of sacred, like this home environment and the system that supports us. And lots of other people support us as well. Like we have a financial planning lawyer who does work for us for free, and a certified accountant who does it for free, because they believe in the housing model. They believe in what we do. And we have a bunch of other supporters who believe in us as well. So it's actually this really nice thing. And we keep our kind of house share rents quite low for the people who are not owners. And it's really in a way, it's a non-profit. We don't, none of us charge anything for our work, like when I work on the numbers or on different parts of it. So it's really quite a neat, cooperative, kind of sacred home. And that's virtually always been honored really well. Certainly the financial part of it is always. We had one couple break up with a difficult breakup with shared ownership. And there wasn't any seconds of contention that put anyone else at risk on the house collective. What we do is, when in terms of the financial ownership share, what we do is we give our notice. Everyone's really empowered. You can just give a year notice and you get paid out. You don't have to find the owner or line up the owner. And we sometimes have some level of wait list of people waiting to come in, or wanting to, or willing to come in more. And sometimes the people living there might want to expand and have another share. But that gives us lots of time. And so what the person does is, if they give notice, they might send an email to everyone, and they might say, yeah, I'm thinking. We have very open style communication dialogue there. So people might say, oh yeah, I'm thinking about having kids in 2 years, and I think we're going to do it elsewhere, not here. So we start lining somebody up right away. And they might give notice and say, okay, we're going to give the 1 year notice officially for this date. But our desire is to get all of our money out, let's say sooner or later. They'll attach a desire statement. And we have almost always been able to perfectly match people's desires in terms of getting their money out at the right time. And so the people who have asked for money out have always, I think every person who's invested in the house and owned has always had a lot of care and appreciation for the house and model. So they've given some flexibility on when it would come out. And we've almost never needed it, but we've just never come close to that threshold of a difficult moment in that way, of maybe having to sell, or some challenge, or any conflict about those funds. It's just been something that's been really positive and served us well. So there's been that clear culture of supporting it. And yeah, some people have said, yeah, keep the investment as long as you want. They could pull it out and invest elsewhere, or they're happy for it to stay in the house for some years. So that's that's been all really positive in that way. And we do also have it all clearly contracted and written out well. And that, as my financial planning lawyer says, the purpose of contracts is not to stand up in court, but it's to remind the people when conflict first rears its head, when our memories fail or our intentions become confused over time, to just have that to refer to as a guiding principle, guiding intention.
Fantastic. All right, so we've got some questions here from the group, and I'll start to ask them. Again, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the questions directly here, or throw some things into the chat. I will say that some of the questions that are coming in are general, co-ownership related questions, and I'll answer them quickly, but I want to and encourage folks to come to our general intro to co-ownership presentation, where we'll really go much more in depth into what's in the legal agreement and how does financing work, etc. But there's a question here: how receptive have mortgage brokers been to assisting a group of individuals in these examples? And I'll just say, generally, the banks are fine. There are specialty products at the credit unions that can really work well for co-ownership, and even the normal banks, the big banks, have a mechanism. They're used to family members, married partners, etc., being on the mortgage together, and in fact, they in some ways like multiple people, because it means they have more folks to go after if anybody ever gets into trouble. Do any of the speakers want to talk? I know, Luke, yours is a more unique funding structure, and Emily, I don't know how much you know about your parents' underlying mortgage, but do you want to talk a little bit about your experiences with financing and trying to make this happen? David or anyone else?
Well, we use the Vancity, and I've been with Vancity for a lot of years, and they have what's called a mixer mortgage. So they've been, I think they created that in 2007 in the Vancouver area. So that's one place that I can recommend. Most banks will finance two parties though, going onto onto a house title and onto a mortgage. I don't think that's a big stretch these days. Once you get more than two, then you may need a credit union or along those lines, but they're certainly more friendly. They're a lot slower to deal with, so keep that in mind. If you're dealing with a Vancity or a credit union, you need to be intentional with your communications with them, follow up, and just because I find they all seem to be understaffed and busy and so on. So you really need to plan well in advance when you're dealing with them for a mortgage or pre-qualification. So yeah, that's what I find.
Anyone else want to add anything to this conversation about financing? I see we even have a mortgage broker on our call here today. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure.
Introduce yourself.
Most lenders will accept up to 4 people on a title. There are some lenders who will do 6. There's some lenders that have no limit at all. And in most cases, if you're looking at a co-ownership agreement, most lenders will consider that today. They want to see the agreement. They want to make sure that if you're not a married couple, there's already an agreement because they're married or living common law. But if you're talking about strangers, the lender's going to want to see, have you thought about exit strategies, all that stuff that can get messy, and they don't want to get in the middle of it. So they want to make sure you've thought it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons we really like the credit unions has to do with their back product. It's not that any bank can generally finance multiple people. There's a little more flexibility in the credit unions when it comes to resale down the road. The ability to take one party off the mortgage to put another party on without disturbing the first party. The ability of a new party to take additional financing on top. So there's a little more flexibility in some of the credit unions like Van City. But yeah, most
Yeah,
of
yeah.
the major banks.
I would point that out, that it's at the discretion of the lender to do that. And it's not just the credit unions who will do that. And, the one underlying fact that everybody has to be aware of when you enter into a co-ownership arrangement is that everybody is responsible for the mortgage. Van City called the thing the mixed mortgage. It's a marketing ploy. Everyone is still responsible for the mortgage. And that's a crucial thing that people have to understand when they enter into that. Unless they're dealing with, a laneway house that's been stratified separate from the main house, then that's, and there are organizations which are trying to get that done at the provincial level so that stratification could come into play, and that ends up becoming a whole different new ball game when it is stratified.
There's a question here about kind of work to own models. There was a question directed at Emily about the Saturna community. Have you heard of anyone doing kind of a labor exchange to make that happen? Amy, did you want to add something?
Emily was kind enough to direct message me back. I sent it to you by mistake. No, my apologies. I'm just a big fan of learning about intentional communities by going and putting in some sweat, and then being able to have a little place to stay and have some food, meet some people. Big fan of that. So we're in contact now.
So that question has been answered. But in general, work to own, I mean, that's maybe not quite what you were asking. I was adapting your question to a larger question. But that's another model that we're seeing people developing as well, right? If people coming in with less equity and rent to own or work to own, or finding a mechanism that works for everybody to create a pathway in as well. Luke, it sounds like your effort, your energies that people put in is not turned into a financial, they don't get financial credit for it. It's just part of the responsibilities of the group. But would you consider a pathway for somebody who wanted to kind of build equity through effort? Do you see that as a viable pathway for in collective labor?
Yeah, I do like trying to harness whatever's possible for the different things that we bring. One aim of our thing. So we had the city thing, and we're also just starting to form a land-based one, perhaps on Bowen Island or Vancouver Island, which is a whole different thing. But yeah, we do like the idea of people being able to bring what they have. And let's say we're older and retired, and we're bringing primarily financial support. And let's say we're quite young, or for whatever reason at the beginning of a financial journey, and we're bringing more effort in building, then we like to build that possibility in, as long as there's some way for that to be a realistic contribution. So if we're building buildings on the land, we're doing something that costs money, then we can balance that financially. I think on the dream house in the city, there's less space right now for sweat equity. It's a house that's virtually finished. There's not a lot of investment to be done in the house or in the project. So it primarily needs people with funding if they want to buy in dollars. But the Bowen one, there's one piece of land that we're looking at right now that might have a significant, like, let's say about $100,000 garbage cleanup on the land. And with that possibility, if there was ones of us who wanted to come in and do, say, 50% of that work, that can equate to a $50,000 share. There just has to be the real potential for the work to go into. So yeah, it is possible. And on that one would be building buildings. So on that one would probably be spending something like $1 million. on projects. And yeah, that could be substituted for sweat to a certain degree. What I would say though is, for us, in terms of like a gauge of maybe focus, commitment, seriousness, and presence, we would almost always look for someone to bring something financially to it. Because there's a lot of people who have the dream of the things, and coming in and putting some work to try it out is pretty easy at first, but actually bringing enough work to be of balance to the other people, that's something that's really important to us. That's actually a critical thing for us, is to feel a relatively easy, stress-free, somewhat self-maintaining, but we have our systems and our structures, kind of balance to effort when we're creating a thing. Whether that's funding in, work on building, sameness is one form, but in diversity, some people having funding and some people using sweat is okay, as long as we really get a nice balance that feels great for everyone.
Anyone else want to add to that? So there's some more questions here that are directed at Luke, but I'm going to take one of them first and highlight it more broadly, which is, how do you make decisions? Is it a majority system? Does your share matter in the decision-making structure? How are decisions done between your parties?
I can answer some of that one. I was doing a workshop on launching collective homes, and one thing that came up was home or property communication methods. And one thing that came out of it is that was the wisdom, I think, that your home or property or group has a communication method. If it's not stated or chosen intentionally, it still has one. It has a communication method that works through certain rules, and it might include things you don't want in there, like aggression or volume or all sorts of things, or passive aggressiveness. And so what we recommend is in any group you form, agreeing to a communication method and choosing one that you think might work for you, perhaps intentionally choosing one. And we have settled on the idea of using NVC, nonviolent communication, as a framework and as a committed model in conflict. And our decision making is based on consensus. So another thing we all sign on to at the start. And I think democracy can be a little bit quicker, easier sometimes, but then there's the greater chance for some parties to be left out. And I've heard that any collective group for long-term feelings of empowerment will move towards something that's more consensus-based. It's the only way for everyone to remain, I think, feeling empowered in that way. And so we do the extra work of consensus as opposed to democracy for decision-making.
David, you sold 2/3 of your house. Did that limit your ability to kind of to make decisions? What model did you guys choose to use?
Yeah, we just used a partnership model. You know, the 2/3, 1/3 only essentially designates the payments, you know, for the mortgage and the insurance and the strata and the, you know, the utilities and so on. So we all just, yeah, there's no structure, power structure associated with 2/3 over 1/3. We're just partners. Yeah.
And that would be the common system that's used in co-op buildings, you know, where each member of the co-op, you know, has one equal share. It's actually the structure that's used in stratas, right? It doesn't matter whether you have a large strata unit or a small strata unit, right? Everyone gets one vote in that sense. So a lot of folks worry that if they sell off, 51% of their property, they'll lose control. But that's generally not how decision making is structured. Again, you'll lay that out in your legal agreement, etc. But mostly things are done through consensus or through majority or supermajority, but where everyone, regardless of share, has an equal say. Other questions that were here for Luke specifically, how many people are there invested in your collective, and how much money did you raise? Like how much were you able to get from the world, if you're willing to share?
Yeah, there's about 10 of us invested. When we bought the house, so we were looking for a house in East Vancouver, and we wound up finding one for sale. So this is 12 years ago, for 750,000 or so. We bought it for 715,000, and we put 215,000 down. So all the people who came together to buy in put together that amount of cash, like everyone's savings. And then the rest we had as outside investors. Actually, a big part of that, initially, it was actually the previous owner of the house agreed to hold a private mortgage for us. So I'm from New Zealand. I'm in New Zealand right now, actually visiting, and here it was more common when my parents bought houses when they were young, or sold a house when they were older. It's often negotiated in a very friendly, supportive way, and so often you might hold a portion of the mortgage or the whole mortgage for the subsequent owners, say for a limited amount of time. So we registered a mortgage for 500,000, and for 5 years, and with the agreement that we would transition either to a bank mortgage or paying off more, or private investors at the end of 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, we raised the rest of that. Say we paid off 50,000. We raised the other 450,000 through private investors. Some people buying in, some also outside investors who just invested for interest. And that's been us since. So we dissolved we settled the registered mortgage. Now we have no mortgage on title, and it's just investors for something in that ballpark, about that 500,000. The other question, a follow-up question to that, do the investors make decisions? Our investors are silent investors, so we write our own contracts for all these things. So our investors are silent. The only thing is we promise that the house or building will not decrease in value, that we won't damage the house. We do renovations and we increase its value. So we renovate the kitchen, we put in hardwood floors, we put in gorgeous things of value, and that's pretty easy for us because I'm a competent renovator. So it's pretty easy for us to do that in a way that's for sure valuable. And the people who own investment share have very little control over what goes on in the house. And that's a separate kind of hat and group. So I own a share, and so my hat as an owner investor is separate from me in the house. So the people in the house, we form a collective, and the idea is that we are leasing the house from our very friendly, very wonderful owners group. And so the owners group had a couple of requirements. They required some fire safety, like, so a couple of rules: no untended fireplace, no open candles used in the house, and that any renovation would increase the value of the house. And that's it. So our owners have no other rights. And then I, as an occupant, we decide everything inside the house based on consensus. And Yeah, it's any renovations, if there's any significant dollar value to the renovations that are done, that's done and paid by the ownership group. And if somebody wants to do something just in their own room or a smaller scale, they'll check in. It's consensus based. So we're always checking in with each other. And but then if that's something that improves the value of the house, it's allowed to go forward. And yeah, works out great for everyone. It's very amicable.
There's a question here going back to the question of financing. I can try to answer this myself. Has anyone tried to secure a mortgage with more than 4 legal contributors? I'm curious whether this requires an extra down payment or if this was a way around, there's a way around that. So as we heard earlier, most financial institutions will do 4 to 6 people without a challenge. Once you get past 5 or 6, it starts to be a little more difficult. But generally I have not seen a penalty for having more people. That doesn't change the underlying structure of the mortgage. And then I had a question here, which I think and it comes up here, which is kind of, how do you guys find your partners? And Ardell, I'll let you talk to this as well, since you're here today. When you're looking, I mean, maybe this is mostly to Luke, because David found a friend, and Emily's family found a friend. But where do you find your partners, and how do you make sure they're a good fit?
Yeah, I can answer this. Yeah, so in terms of our model, I mean, it's very aligned with purpose, right? The purpose is to live in the city in kind of an affordable way, but also to live with people and have this social family model. That's a big part of our purpose. And we noticed early on that this was just a double win. Like we love the people that we're around. We learn and enjoy each of them and from them. We have our challenges at times, but we believe and acknowledge that it's enriching and beneficial for us. And so for the people who want to live in that situation and want to make that more stable, then they invest in it financially. The dollar values for an investment, say our house divides into 6 shares in a way that's almost analogous to 1 share per room. It's got a few other details to it. But the 6 shares are worth about $250,000 each, so about $333,000. And what that gets someone is full ownership in their home and in their share, like empowered ownership. But it's contingent on this model of being able to communicate, cooperate, co-create with the other people. So we're tied into a network of other collective homes. Yeah, it's a big group. I mean, we're exposed to hundreds of people. That's a little bit different. Be able to live maybe in their way, like outside of. And a part of that I think really completes it is the financial responsibility part. And so I think we have of doing it our way, I think we get the absolute best version of our way of doing it. So I think it's the lowest cost and most rewards in the way of shared living with other people. To be able to completely own your stable home would be that amount of money. At our house is $333,000. So we come across people who are looking to live with us, people in other collective homes, people in our other kind of intentional social groups. We overlap with a lot of kind of semi-hippie things, some meditation groups or dance groups, and or places like this. So I think like ideal through something like this is if someone did want to live collectively, then yeah, then I'd really invite you to come out and meet us and see the home and spend a little more time. And I think we're one of the great options for one of the other ways to do things. And it's yeah, shared benefits, shared like any family, shared financial benefits. I find it really symbiotic.
Great. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to bridge into their closing presentation in a minute and tell you a little bit about our matchmaking services and kind of what Coho offers. And then I'm going to encourage folks to stick around to the end, and then we can keep chatting a little bit more. But I did want to take this chance, since it seemed relevant, to introduce Ardell. I want you to tell us a little bit about what you're trying to do. You're on mute still.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, well, I will type into the chat the website there. This is a fairly new service. It's based on the freemium model, so all of the major functions are no cost. There are just some extras that can be subscription. And it's basically, think of a mashup between a dating site and a roommate finder. And it's got a detailed profile that matches people on the back end based on quite a few categories, like, dogs, cats, food preferences, whether people are looking for a sort of a more religiously, some kind of spiritual or religious kind of shared values, and as well as practical things like, do you want to share, what type of housing and how closely do you want to share, what's more, so it takes 28 questions that it uses to match people with each other. And there are a lot more questions than that people can choose to answer, but you can get started fairly easily and see who you match up with.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's really exciting to see the growth in this sphere and the fact that there are more services, right, like Coho, like IC Match, that are really here to guide you and support you and help make this a reality and a success. So just to take a minute to talk a little bit about what Coho does and how we can help on that front as well. And again, I'm happy to take a few more questions and chat a little more after, just very conscious of the time. So Coho has been involved in a number of really unique sales and deals recently, from half a house to properties with 8 homes on one property. We help people sell shares in their home to new people. We help buyer groups come together to acquire homes, and really looking at all sorts of models by which to make stuff happen. So for example, we have one unit, or no, we have one of the agents on our, who specializes in this, Brian Horowitz from the Cowichan Valley, has a share in a house right now. It's a half duplex for sale that entitles you to a 30% interest in a 5-acre property outside of Parksville in Arrington. And this is an example of somebody who, much like David talked about earlier, is looking to kind of build a little more equity for their retirement, get someone maybe on site to support them. And so they've created a model of an offering that creates value, that creates community, and creates a pathway that is successful for everyone involved. So the real estate agents who are involved with us do sell, properties. And I recently sold a half a house on MLS in Vancouver. So we can use some public marketing techniques, to go out and find you a partner if you already have property and need a new partner for that property. We also put groups together to acquire homes. So when we see really unique properties that clearly are designed for sharing. This is an example of a Kitsilano house with a 4-bedroom, which has 4 suites in it, a 4-bedroom main home, a 2-bedroom garden suite, a studio garden suite, and a 2-bedroom coach house. And so when we see a property like this, we go to our database of people and say, who is in this neighborhood, who can fit this, and try to put groups together to make it happen. We have a group that's pursuing, a wonderful 3-suited home right now off Commercial Drive together. And we have groups that are kind of trying to convert homes into these multiple suited things if they have the right bones and infrastructure for it. One of the things that we're helping right now with is nesting. I like that term Emily used earlier. Nesting community within community. So we're working with a couple of the co-housing communities around Vancouver to create collective living within co-housing. So you really get the best of all worlds. You get the affordability of sharing a home, but you don't just have to share this 1,200 square foot 3-bedroom, for example. You can actually still, on top of that, have access to everything that co-housing has to offer. If you don't know what co-housing is, we can talk about it after. But generally, these co-housing communities have 6,000 plus square feet of guest rooms, home office space, kids rooms, teen rooms, workshops, libraries, kitchens, and other spaces to throw parties. So you really can live in smaller space and access all that community. There's an interesting group on Pender Island right now trying to create kind of a resilience model to climate change and create a collective around the agricultural potential of land and utilizing the, understanding what the potential, what's a sustainable amount of people a piece of land can feed, and then creating models to build community around that. So if you're looking for a housing partner, we have a partner survey on our website where then our matchmaking team will try to connect you with other folks who are looking for partners with similar goals and values as well. We have a classifieds section on our website where people put out a little paragraph about themselves, and other folks can self-identify and try to connect through that classified model. And then we have groups that meet in person in various different communities around the province. Currently, we have active groups in East Vancouver, North Vancouver, Victoria, Comox, and the Cowichan Valley, though we are having groups starting to form on the Sunshine Coast and on some of the Gulf Islands and other places. I mentioned the classifieds, right? Just a couple examples of the kinds of classifieds we have. They are from around the province. Right now, here we have the first one is a Vancouver example. The second one's Victoria. The third one is in the Cowichan Valley. And we see a lot of interest from various demographic groups. Certainly a lot of interest from young families, and also a lot of interest from single adults in their 40s to 60s who are kind of at a stage in life where they really, they have some stability and they want some more community. So there's some really interesting stuff. And here's Sunshine Coast, Squamish, so really across the province. And I apologize, Luke, I meant to include your project here. I'll give you a moment in a minute to talk about your search. So if this is something that is of interest to you, we do encourage you to go to our website. There are a lot of resources about how this works. We have videos like this. We actually have a number of other conversations with co-owner videos on our YouTube channel from previous sessions. So you can hear from different co-owners or hear from David and Luke again, because they've been with us before. Thank you guys for coming back. So we have a lot of resources to guide you through it. And as I said at the very beginning, if you missed it, we have the professionals, we have the lawyers, we have the financial institutions, we have the builders, if you want to build something specifically with co-ownership in mind. We have mediators if you ever get to a challenge. We have all the professionals who understand the subtleties and complexities of co-ownership. to kind of help guide you through the system. And then, many of the leaders here, David, myself, and Brian, who I've mentioned, we are real estate agents, so we can sit down with you and help you navigate what it is you need from housing, what is the best pathway for you. Is it co-ownership? Is it traditional ownership? And really put your needs first and identify what it is that you need. We do a series of events. So this is one of the best, one of the ones that I really do appreciate, the conversation with co-owners. We'll do another one of these in a few months' time. It's not scheduled yet, but stay tuned. We also do tours of shareable homes. We have tours coming up in North Vancouver and East Vancouver, and they're already scheduled. And there's a plan to schedule tours in Victoria, in Duncan, in Comox, and on the Sunshine Coast. So anyone who's here today, if you're not yet on the Coho list, you'll be added to the Coho list. Hopefully you choose to stay, but there's an unsubscribe button if you need to unsubscribe. And stay tuned to find events in your area. We also do an online matchmaking evening once every few months. So I encourage you to come, meet other people looking for partners or people who have properties they're looking to share, and see what pathways exist for you. And as I said, we do have our intro to co-ownership presentation. The next one scheduled is May 1st, but actually if you're new to the, if you're new to Coho, you'll get an entry email and it'll have a link to a past presentation of this. So you can really watch the full 1 hour conversation that goes into all the basic details. So we really do try to have everything we need to, get you from pillar to post, as it were, to get you, set up, confident, find the right partner, find the right property, have the right legal agreement, have the right financial structure, and have the right guide through your co-ownership specialist, real estate agent, and other folks to help you get through that whole process. So if you did want to connect with somebody, you can reach out to Coho broadly or to myself, or if you know that you're looking in the Victoria area, please do reach out to David. And Brian couldn't be with us tonight because he's busy writing an offer for somebody, because that's our lives as real estate agents. But if you're looking on the Gulf Islands or up in the Comox or Cowichan areas, he would be your next point of contact. But yes, I do know that Luke, who's here, does have is looking for a partner as well. So new people to join the Dream House. So we'll talk a little bit about what you're looking for, and then we'll open the floor back up to conversation if people want to just keep chatting.
Sure. Thanks, Noam. Yeah, we're creating a few things. I mean, we have the Dream House that has been going for about 11 years. And yeah, we're open to a new partner or two in the Dream House. So that would be someone. We're definitely generally open to investment if people are looking to invest money and have that just as kind of angel ethical investment. That's almost always there. But in terms of a co-owner coming in, yeah, that's a neat opening for us, as we have space for one or two people who wanted to live in something like the Dream House, which for us is we sometimes describe ourselves as, or our home as maybe 50% personal activism and 50% sanctuary, where we aim to really create a way of living that's in line with our values. So we choose a bunch of values together. We support each other in living that way in our home, like our communication methods or non-hierarchical kind of existence. And then we make a lovely kind of home sanctuary. And then it also being a place to invest, but hopefully with the investment, I think, being a secondary thing to the support for a home, like to the home ownership and the the kind of dream of living somewhere stably or creating that together. So yeah, we're totally open to that. And Nadia, I sent you a message already. Yeah. And then the second thing we're doing is this Bowen Island or Vancouver Island creation. And we're open to partners on that too. We tend to have a lot of people interested. So that really depends on kind of resonance and view way of creating, but that's a very new thing for us. So feel free to reach out if you think there's some great overlap or resonance and that kind of thing.
Perfect. And again, if you see yourself across the province, wherever it might be, please do reach out and we'll see what pathways exist in our networks, in our database of hundreds of folks looking for partners from really from all the way up north to, you know, to the island. So yeah, so at this point, I really want to thank everyone for coming and particularly thank our speakers. Emily has left us already, but Luke and David, thank you so much for sharing so much about your experience, your pathways, your vision. It is so exciting to see people really living this dream. I mean, I get a huge thrill every time I place somebody into one of these situations because I think it's such a great form of, again, of triple bottom line housing, right? Good financially, environmentally, and socially. But it is always great to see people who are doing it, who have been doing it, families like Emily's who've been doing it for a long time, and really proving the model that this is better housing for less money. So thank you everyone for coming. Please do stay involved in Coho, get connected, reach out to us. And you don't have to leave right now. Stick around for a few minutes. Ask your more personal questions if you'd like. And thank you for spending your evening with us.